It started with a casual comment during Sunday dinner, a loaded question disguised as concern. "Mom, have you thought about what you're going to do with the cottage long term? It's just sitting there most of the year." Mark, my son, wasn't known for subtlety, but even this felt unusually blunt. His wife, Sarah, chimed in with a saccharine smile. "We were just thinking, with the kids getting older, they'd love a place like that. So many memories we could make." Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below, and if you believe family should protect, not exploit each other. Hit that like button and subscribe for more. I had always been generous with my family. After my husband, Thomas, passed 5 years ago, I made sure everyone was taken care of. I helped Mark and Sarah with their down payment on a house, paid for my daughter Emily's wedding, and covered various expenses for grandchildren over the years. The cottage, as they called it, was a modest 3-bedroom house near the coast, originally bought by Thomas and me as an investment and potential retirement spot. After his death, I kept it, renting it out part-time but also using it for occasional weekends myself or letting family use it for free when it was vacant. It represented security, flexibility, and a connection to Thomas. Now, it seemed, it represented something else entirely to Mark and Sarah, an untapped resource, waiting to be claimed. Until I realized my own family saw me as nothing more than a source of money. My life had been one of quiet stability, built on sensible choices and a deep love for my family. I was Eleanor Vance, a widow in my late 60s, living comfortably in the house Thomas and I had shared for 40 years. My assets were modest but secure: the main house, paid off, the coastal property, and a healthy portfolio of investments and savings, carefully managed. I had worked hard as a teacher for 30 years, and Thomas had built a successful small business. We weren't wealthy, but we were secure. That security was, to me, a shield for my future and a legacy for my children, to be distributed fairly and thoughtfully after I was gone. I had made that clear in my existing will: assets split equally between Mark and Emily, with provisions for grandchildren. Mark, my only son, had always been a bit more demanding than Emily. He seemed to view my finances as a communal pool he had primary access to, a belief Sarah actively encouraged. They often spoke of their financial struggles, the rising costs of raising 2 teenagers, the pressure of keeping up appearances in their affluent suburb. I had listened, sympathized, and helped when I could, never imagining they saw my willingness to help as an open invitation to take. The coastal house, in particular, seemed to feature heavily in their conversations about their future. They spoke of needing more space, of escaping the city, of the potential for passive income if they ever decided to rent it out themselves. Looking back, the hints had been there for years, small comments about how perfect the cottage would be for them, how difficult it must be for me to manage 2 properties. I had simply seen it as chatter, not reconnaissance. The first real jolt came a few weeks after that dinner conversation. Mark called, his tone shifting from casual chat to pointed questioning. "Mom, seriously about the cottage. Sarah and I have been talking. We really need it. Need it. Our mortgage is killing us, and if we had the cottage, we could sell this place, downsize, and live mortgage-free. It would be life-changing." The audacity stunned me into silence for a moment. "Mark," I finally managed, "that's not a small thing. It's my property. It's part of my plan." His voice tightened. "Your plan? Mom, you're not getting any younger. What do you need 2 houses for? Emily doesn't want it. She's happy where she is." "This is perfect for us." Sarah took the phone, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Eleanor, darling, think of the grandchildren. Imagine them growing up with a place by the sea. It would mean so much to us." To the family, the word family felt like a weapon in her mouth. Later that week, I overheard a snippet of conversation when they thought I was out of earshot. Mark was speaking, low and urgent. "She won't live forever. We just need to push a bit. Get her to agree to transfer it now. Maybe say it's for tax reasons or something. Once it's in our name, she can't do anything about it." Sarah's reply was colder, Calculating, exactly. And make sure the will leaves everything else just to you. Emily doesn't need it. She has her husband's money. This is our chance. The blood ran cold in my veins. It wasn't about needing the house, it was about taking it. And they were already planning to cut Emily out of my will, assuming they could manipulate me into changing it. The betrayal hit me with physical force. My stomach clenched, my hands trembled slightly. This wasn't the son I had raised, the daughter-in-law I had welcomed into our family. This was something predatory, something ugly. Initial disbelief washed over me. Surely I had misunderstood? They couldn't be this cold, this calculating, about their own mother's assets, their own sister's inheritance? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they were just desperate? But the overheard conversation, the tone, the planning, it wasn't desperation, it was entitlement and greed. A cold knot formed in my chest. I knew instinctively that confronting them directly wouldn't work. They would deny it, twist my words, turn it back on me. I needed time to think, to understand the full extent of their intentions, and to protect myself. My first defensive action was small but significant. I retrieved my will from the safe deposit box, along with the property deeds and financial statements. I tucked them away in a private filing cabinet in my study, a place only I had access to. I also quietly changed the locks on my study door. It felt strange, like I was guarding against intruders in my own home, but the intruders were already inside, in my family. The pressure from Mark and Sarah escalated quickly. Calls and texts became more frequent, the tone more insistent. They began talking about the coastal house as if it were already theirs, making speculative plans about renovations, discussing how they would split the time there. When I demurred, suggesting I wasn't ready to make any decisions, the veiled hostility surfaced. Sarah sighed dramatically. "Eleanor, we're just trying to plan for the future. Our future. It would be so much easier if we could just sort this out now. Delaying is just stressful for everyone," Mark added. "Yeah, Mom. It's not like you need the stress. You're not getting younger, you know. Managing all this must be a burden." They used my age, my status as a widow, my supposed frailty as weapons. They even started hinting that perhaps I wasn't thinking clearly about my finances, suggesting they should help me manage things. This veiled threat, the insinuation of questioning my mental competency, chilled me to the bone. That's when the methodical side of my nature took over. I started documenting everything. Every call, every text, every conversation about the houses or my finances went into a small notebook I kept hidden. I screenshotted texts and emails. I made quiet inquiries to my bank about setting up alerts for unusual activity. This wasn't about revenge. It was about building a shield, gathering facts. I knew I couldn't navigate this alone, so I made an appointment with Mr. Harrison, a solicitor specializing in elder law and estate planning recommended by a trusted friend. I told him I was reviewing my estate plans, but also had some concerns about family dynamics and property. He listened patiently, his expression neutral as I laid out the situation, the overheard conversation, the increasing pressure. "Documentation is key, Eleanor," he advised calmly. "Keep collecting everything. Any written communication, note dates and times of calls. And do not sign anything, absolutely anything, without bringing it to me first." Even seemingly innocuous documents, he explained my rights regarding my property, that I had absolute ownership and the right to sell or transfer as I saw fit, regardless of anyone's expectations. He also outlined the process for amending my will and the legal safeguards against undue influence. Learning my legal standing was incredibly empowering. It shifted my fear into quiet determination. The family pressure intensified as they sensed my resistance. Mark stopped by unexpectedly, just checking in, but his eyes scanned my study, lingering on the locked cabinet. Sarah began calling Emily, trying to enlist her help in convincing me, painting a picture of me as lonely and overwhelmed, needing my son's help with my affairs. Emily, bless her sensible heart, saw through it immediately and called me, concerned but supportive. "Mom, just be careful. They're obsessed with that house. The second micro cameo, the direct confrontation, came when Mark and Sarah cornered me after a family gathering. "Mom," Mark began, his voice tight with frustration, "we need a decision. We need to know about the cottage." "We're putting our life on hold waiting for you," Sarah added, her voice sharp. "Frankly, Eleanor, it's selfish to keep us waiting when you don't even use it properly. We're family. We deserve this." The word deserve hung in the air, thick with entitlement. My resolve hardened completely. They didn't see me as their mother. They saw me as an obstacle to their perceived inheritance. Strategic preparation began in earnest. With Mr. Harrison's guidance, I started putting protective measures in place. I met with my financial advisor and reviewed my accounts, ensuring they were secure and that no one else had access. I discussed my plan to potentially sell the coastal house and consolidate my finances. I instructed Mr. Harrison to prepare a new will draft, one that removed Mark and Sarah as beneficiaries entirely. I wasn't ready to finalize it yet, but having the paperwork ready felt like holding a powerful key. Meanwhile, Mark and Sarah resorted to fake emergencies. They claimed their heating had broken in winter and needed a large sum immediately for repairs, hoping I'd feel guilty and dip into my savings, perhaps weakening my financial position regarding the coastal house. I offered to call a reputable repair service for them, suggesting direct payment to the company. They refused, suddenly backtracking, saying they'd sorted it out. It was a clumsy lie. Each tactic, each lie, cemented my decision. I wasn't giving in. I was fighting back, quietly and strategically. The smoking gun was a series of emails I discovered almost by accident. I had allowed Sarah to use my computer briefly months ago, and she had forgotten to log out of her personal email before closing the browser. Curiosity, coupled with my newfound suspicion, made me check her sent folder. There, in plain sight, were emails between Sarah and Mark detailing their plans. Not just wanting the house, but how they would convince me, the tactics they would use, how they would manage the finances once it was theirs, even discussing potentially transferring the property into an offshore trust to protect it from any future claims I or Emily might have. There was a particularly sickening exchange about how they would get me declared legally incompetent if I refused to cooperate, citing my age and recent memory lapses, small, normal moments of forgetfulness they had clearly catalogued. They had even consulted with a lawyer of their own about how to initiate guardianship proceedings. This wasn't just greed, it was a full-blown plot to take everything and sideline me. Finding those emails was like a physical blow, but it also gave me immense clarity. This was the definitive proof Mr. Harrison had spoken of. I printed them all, dated them, and secured them in my file. Armed with this damning evidence, I met with Mr. Harrison again. He read the emails, his face grim. "This changes things, Eleanor. This isn't just undue influence. This is clear evidence of malicious intent and potential elder abuse." He explained that the emails provided significant legal leverage. I had the proof I needed to not only protect my assets, but also potentially expose their actions legally if necessary. The legal weapon I acquired wasn't a single document, but the confirmed power of my position, backed by undeniable evidence. Mr. Harrison outlined the counter-strategy. First, finalize the sale of the coastal house quickly and quietly. Second, immediately finalize the amendment to my will, removing Mark and Sarah as beneficiaries. Third, consider sending them a formal legal notice confirming my actions and warning against further harassment or false claims. The most satisfying part of the counter-strategy implementation was calling a real estate agent I trusted, explaining the need for a fast, discreet sale, and listing the coastal house. The market was good, and interest was immediate. Meanwhile, Mark and Sarah, oblivious to the storm gathering around them, grew increasingly overconfident. They stopped hinting and started demanding a timeline for the property transfer. They talked about bringing in contractors to assess renovations on my property without my permission, assuming my silence meant compliance. Their arrogance was astounding, fueled by their conviction that they had successfully manipulated me into a corner. They made the crucial mistake of believing their own narrative of my helplessness. The climax unfolded swiftly and, for them, brutally. Mr. Harrison's office sent a formal letter to Mark and Sarah outlining my decision to sell the coastal property and informing them that, as a consequence of their actions, I had amended my will, removing them as beneficiaries. The letter was polite but firm, stating my reasons were based on their demonstrated intentions and behavior. Simultaneously, the sale of the coastal house proceeded rapidly. Within weeks, it was finalized. The proceeds were safely transferred into a separate, secure account under my sole control. When they received the letter, their shock was palpable, even from a distance. The phone calls began almost immediately, frantic, then angry, then tearful attempts at damage control. Mark called first, his voice shaking with rage. "What have you done? You sold the house. How could you do that?" Sarah followed, alternating between weeping and accusations. "Eleanor, how could you be so cruel? After everything we've done for you. And the will? You're disinheriting your own son." They realized they hadn't just failed. They had pushed so hard they had destroyed their entire plan and their future expectations. They were in full panic mode. But I maintained control. I took their calls, but my voice was calm, measured. "I did what I needed to do to protect myself and my assets, Mark. Your actions, your plans to take my property and question my capacity, left me no choice. I have documented everything to Sarah," I said. "Your behavior was unacceptable, Sarah. I cannot trust you. The house is sold, and my will reflects my current wishes. I didn't engage with their histrionics or accusations. I simply stated the facts of what I had done and why." The truth, backed by the evidence I had gathered, began to filter out to the extended family. Some were shocked, some sided with Mark and Sarah, believing their fabricated story of me being old and confused. But others, particularly those who had witnessed Mark and Sarah's entitled behavior over the years, understood. Emily was steadfastly on my side, horrified by her brother's actions. In their final desperation, Mark and Sarah tried guilt, threats, even attempted to contact potential buyers of the coastal house before the sale was finalized to spread lies, which Mr. Harrison quickly shut down with a cease and desist letter. They talked of contesting the will, of spreading rumors about my mental state. But their tactics had lost their power. They had overplayed their hand, and their manipulative scheme had collapsed entirely. Now, I live in my home, the main house filled with decades of genuine memories. The coastal house is gone, replaced by a significant addition to my financial security. The will is updated, protecting my assets and ensuring they go to beneficiaries I trust. Mark and Sarah face the consequences of their greed, estranged from me and Emily, their hopes of an early inheritance dashed, and their own financial situation no doubt complicated by the failure of their scheme. My home is quiet now, peaceful. There are clear boundaries where there once were none. The relationship with Mark and Sarah is permanently changed, irrevocably broken by their betrayal. But I have my peace, my security, and the quiet strength that comes from standing up for myself, even against my own family. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself.